If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching from. Continuing. The orchestra of horns and engines of New York City had already fallen silent when Raina finished her math exercises. It was almost midnight, and the only sound heard in the small apartment in Eastwood Borough was the soft clinking of plates being stacked in the sink. Mrs. Joanna, her mother, had just arrived from her second shift as a cleaning assistant at the Grand Palace Hotel, one of the most luxurious on Fifth Avenue. "Mom, can I help you at the hotel tomorrow?" "Class was cancelled because of the teachers' meeting," Raina asked, putting her worn notebook back into her backpack. Mrs. Joanna sighed, drying her hands on her worn apron. Her daughter, just 10 years old, already displayed a maturity that frightened her. Raina's eyes, large and expressive, contrasted with her small, thin body, a consequence not only of genetics, but also of the hardships faced since her father abandoned them 3 years ago. "Daughter, that place isn't for you. It's full of stuck-up people who look at us as if we're invisible. Or worse, as if we're dirt they want to sweep under the rug. But you'll need help, won't you? Tomorrow is that party you told me about, the one for the rich folks." Mrs. Joanna looked at her daughter with a mix of pride and concern. Raina was too smart for her age. She noticed everything, understood the sacrifices, the injustices, the doors that remained closed to people like them. "It's a charity event," Joanna explained with a hint of irony in her voice. "They'll gather to decide how to help the poor while eating off plates that cost more than I earn in a month." Raina sat at the kitchen table, playing with the piano-shaped refrigerator magnet. It was her favorite object, a reminder of better times when her mother still taught music at a small community school in the neighborhood. Joanna had been a promising pianist in her youth, before an unexpected pregnancy and marriage to an unstable man redirected her life away from the stage. "If I go, I promise to stay quiet in a corner just helping you. No one will even notice I'm there." Joanna hesitated. Taking Raina would mean taking risks. The supervisor, Mr. Adam, was strict about the rules. Employees could not bring family members to the workplace, much less during important events like the charity dinner scheduled for the next day. On the other hand, the babysitter who usually stayed with Raina had said she was unavailable, and leaving the girl alone at home was unthinkable. "All right," she finally conceded, "but you'll stay in the service areas, away from the ballrooms. And if Mr. Adam asks, you're Marlene from the laundry's niece, got it?" Raina nodded energetically, a smile lighting up her face. For her, visiting the luxury hotel was like entering a fantasy world, so distant from the reality of the small apartment where they lived, with its peeling walls and the constant sound of leaks when it rained. The next morning, the alarm clock rang at 5 o'clock. It was still dark when mother and daughter left home, taking 2 buses until they reached the city center. Raina watched through the foggy window as the landscape transformed. The buildings grew taller, the streets cleaner. The people better dressed as they approached Fifth Avenue. The Grand Palace Hotel stood imposingly, its mirrored facade reflecting New York City's gray sky. To reach the service entrance, they walked around the building to a side alley, where delivery trucks unloaded supplies and uniforms hanging on hangers were taken to the laundry. "Remember the plan," Mrs. Joanna whispered as they passed security. "Stay in the staff room, do your homework, and when I finish my shift, we'll leave together." Raina agreed, although her eyes already wandered curiously down the service corridor, absorbing every detail of that parallel universe that existed behind the scenes of luxury. She observed the uniformed employees who moved like organized ants, each with their specific function. Housekeepers with their cleaning carts, waiters practicing smiles in front of small mirrors, chefs loudly discussing the evening's menu. The staff room was a cramped space with a few plastic chairs, a table with coffee and biscuits, and a bulletin board full of internal notices. Raina settled in a corner with her sketchbook, promising not to leave. But curiosity was stronger than any promise. When the clock struck noon and her mother went to lunch in the cafeteria, Raina decided to explore. She knew she shouldn't, but something propelled her, as if an invisible thread pulled her through the hotel's labyrinthine corridors. That's how she discovered, hidden behind a service door, the entrance to the Grand Crystal Ballroom, the hotel's most prestigious space, where that night's charity event would take place. The ballroom was empty, still being prepared, Staff adjusted tablecloths, polished silverware, and arranged flower displays. But what captivated Raina's attention was the black grand piano positioned on a small stage at the back. It gleamed under the light of the crystal chandeliers like a magical creature, asleep and waiting to be awakened. Without anyone noticing, Raina approached the instrument. Her fingers trembled as they lightly touched the keys, producing no sound. She remembered the lessons her mother had given her years ago on the old electronic keyboard they had to sell. How she had missed it. The feel of the keys under her fingers, the melodies that emerged like birds taking flight. "What are you doing here?" The deep, authoritative voice made Raina jump back. It was Mr. Adam, the supervisor, a tall, bony man with perpetually furrowed brows. I'm with my Aunt Marlene from the laundry," she stammered, remembering their agreed-upon story. "Marlene doesn't have nieces," he retorted, grabbing her arm. "You're Joanna's daughter, aren't you? I've seen your picture in her wallet." At that moment, Raina felt the world crumble. She had put her mother's job at risk with her disobedience. "Please don't tell my mother," Raina pleaded, her eyes welling up. "She really needs this job." Mr. Adam pressed his lips into a thin line, undecided. He had known Joanna for 2 years and knew she was an exemplary employee, always punctual and efficient. She had never caused trouble. Until now. "Do you have any idea what would happen if Mr. Henry Vaughan found a child wandering around the ballroom before his event? I'd lose my job, your mother would lose hers, and we'd probably be sued." The name Henry Vaughan made Raina shiver. She had heard her mother mention that man a few times, always in a tone of disapproval. He owned half of New York City's real estate ventures, a businessman known for his ruthlessness in business and his contempt for the less fortunate. "I'll take you back to the staff room and you won't leave there again. Got it?" "Then I'll talk to your mother." Raina nodded, resigned. As they were escorted out of the ballroom, the piano remained behind, gleaming under the light like a broken promise. Something inside the girl tightened at the thought that she might never again have the chance to play an instrument like that. The afternoon passed slowly and tortuously. Raina remained quiet in the staff room, drawing in her sketchbook to distract her mind from worries. She drew the piano, the keys, trying to capture in pencil strokes the majesty she had witnessed. When Mrs. Joanna appeared at the door, her face tense and her eyes red, Raina knew that Mr. Adam had already spoken to her. "Let's go home," she said dryly. "But your shift isn't over yet." "I managed to swap with Doris. We need to talk." Raina. On the way home. Inside the crowded bus, Joanna remained silent. Only when they arrived at the apartment did she finally explode. "Do you have any idea what you did today? I almost lost my job because of you." "Mr. Adam only didn't fire me because I have a clean record, but he'll be watching me from now on." "Sorry, Mom. It's just that I saw the piano and—" "Piano?" Joanna interrupted, confused. "What piano?" "In the big ballroom. It was so beautiful, all black and shiny. It looked like the piano you used to play at school, only much bigger." Mrs. Joanna's expression softened a little. She remembered how delighted her daughter had been, even as a baby, when she played the small upright piano at the community school where she taught. How her little eyes sparkled, and her tiny hands tried to imitate her mother's movements on the keys. Before everything changed, before the school closed due to lack of funds, before Anthony abandoned them with debts and shattered dreams. "Raina, you need to understand that world isn't for us. Those people see us as servants, as invisible. We're just there to clean up their mess, understood?" The girl lowered her eyes, but something in her refused to accept that statement. "Why can't it be for us, Mom? You played so well. You could play there too." Joanna smiled sadly. "Things don't work that way, daughter. But look, I promise that one day when I save enough money, we'll buy you a new keyboard so you can learn." That night, while Joanna slept exhausted, Raina remained awake. Looking out the bedroom window at the distant city lights, she imagined what the event at the Grand Palace would be like at that exact moment. The luxurious dresses, the glittering jewels, the music, the silenced piano she never had a chance to play. She fell asleep with these images in her head and dreamed she was on stage, strumming a melody that made all the rich and powerful bow in reverence. The next morning, the phone rang early. It was Mr. Adam, his voice trembling with nervousness. "Joanna, I know it's not your day to work, but we have an emergency." 3 cleaning staff members won't be able to come today. Yesterday's event was a success, but it left the ballroom in a terrible mess. And tonight we'll have the second part of the charity event with even more guests. Joanna hesitated, thinking of Raina. She had no one to leave her with. I really need you, Mr. Adam insisted. I'll pay double overtime. Please, Joanna. The overtime money would make a difference in their tight budget. It could speed up the purchase of the keyboard she had promised her daughter. Maybe she could even afford the enrollment fee for that sewing course she so wanted to take. Yes, I'll come. But I need to bring my daughter. I promise she'll stay in the staff room the whole time. She won't cause any trouble. There was a sigh on the other end of the line. All right, but under no circumstances can she move around the hotel, especially today, as Mr. Vaughn will be particularly agitated. It seems he plans to make an important announcement. 3 hours later, Joanna and Raina arrived at the hotel again. This time the girl solemnly swore she would stay where her mother told her. She felt guilty about the scare from the previous day and wanted to redeem herself. The staff room was emptier that day, being Sunday. Only a few security guards and part of the cleaning staff were working. Raina tried to concentrate on her drawings, but soon boredom overcame her. She decided then to help the staff with small tasks. She folded towels, organized cleaning products, even helped polish some silver cutlery under the watchful eye of Mrs. Irene, the hotel's longest-serving employee. You have a good eye for detail. Girl, Irene praised, observing how Raina carefully polished each fork. Just like your mother. She cleans those rooms as if they were queen's palaces. The hours passed like this, between small tasks and conversations with the staff who gradually grew fond of the girl's cheerful presence. Even Mr. Adam, passing by the room and seeing her meticulously organizing cleaning products by color and size, managed a reluctant smile. In the late afternoon, Mrs. Joanna appeared in the room, breathless and her face shining with sweat. I need help, she said, addressing everyone in the room. Nancy felt unwell. We have 7 bathrooms to clean in less than an hour, and guests will start arriving soon. Looks of apprehension crossed. Everyone was already overloaded with their own duties. That's when Raina stood up timidly. I can help, Mum. Joanna looked at her daughter, evaluating the proposal. Raina already helped her at home with cleaning, knew the products, knew what to do. And they were just the bathrooms in the corridor leading to the ballroom, not the ballroom itself. All right, she finally decided. But you're only going to clean the mirrors and replenish the soaps. No strong chemicals, understood. Raina nodded, happy to be useful. She received yellow rubber gloves, too large for her small hands, and a spray bottle with glass cleaner. For the next hour she worked alongside her mother, silent and efficient, cleaning mirrors until they reflected like still water on a windless day. They were in the last bathroom when they heard voices approaching. Guests were beginning to arrive. Mrs. Joanna hurried, putting away products and checking that everything was spotless. Come on, Raina, we're done here. Go back to the staff room while I put away the cleaning cart. But when Raina left the bathroom, she found the corridor already occupied by dozens of elegantly dressed people. Men in suits, women in ball gowns and glittering jewels, all heading to the grand crystal ballroom. She tried to dodge, to pass unnoticed, but the flow of people was intense and, without realizing it, she ended up being swept in the opposite direction from the staff room. The ballroom shone in all its splendor. Crystal chandeliers reflected thousands of luminous points on the polished marble floor, while arrangements of white and lilac orchids decorated the tables covered with Egyptian linen tablecloths. The string orchestra played softly in the background, creating an atmosphere of refined elegance. Raina felt tiny in that setting. Her simple clothes, faded jeans and a blue t-shirt that had once belonged to an older cousin, contrasted sharply with the guests' formal wear. To make matters worse, she was still wearing the yellow rubber gloves, too large for her small hands, forgotten in the shock of being dragged into the ballroom. She tried to hide behind a column, desperately searching for a discreet exit, but the movement was intense in all directions. It was then that she noticed the piano, the same magnificent instrument she had admired the day before, now illuminated by a soft spotlight, as if it were a star in the firmament of that universe of ostentation. Are you lost? The gentle voice startled Raina. It was an elegant, middle-aged woman with carefully styled grey hair and kind eyes. I'm an employee's daughter, Raina stammered, trying to hide the rubber gloves. "I got lost." The woman smiled, understanding. "I see. Do you want me to help you find your mother?" Before Raina could answer, a murmur ran through the ballroom. People moved aside, making way for a tall, imposing man with graying temples and an impeccably cut suit. It was Henry Vaughan, the host and sponsor of the event, accompanied by a group of equally well-dressed businessmen and politicians. "Dr. Eliza, what a pleasure to see you here," Vaughan said, approaching the woman who was talking to Raina. "Your work with the Ascend Institute has been fundamental to the success of this initiative." The woman, Dr. Eliza, smiled politely, but seemed uncomfortable with the compliments. Raina noticed that she discreetly gripped the strap of her purse as if seeking support. "Thank you, Henry, but the credit goes to the children and teenagers who attend the Institute. They are the true inspiration." It was then that Henry Vaughan noticed Raina's presence. His eyes, cold as blue ice stones, scanned the girl from head to toe, lingering on the yellow gloves. Something in his expression changed. A flash of cruel amusement crossed his face. "And who do we have here?" "One of the children from your institute, Dr. Eliza." Before the woman could explain, another man from the group, corpulent and with a thick moustache, let out a mocking laugh. "Looks more like some cleaning lady's daughter who got lost," he commented, loud enough for several people around to hear and discreetly laugh. Raina felt her face burn with shame. She wished the ground would open beneath her feet, that she could become invisible, that she could go back in time and never have left the bathroom. But she was stuck there, exposed like an exotic animal in a glass cage for the amusement of those people. Henry Vaughan, noticing the girl's embarrassment, decided to amplify it. He was known for his acidic humor and his ability to turn uncomfortable situations into spectacles for his own entertainment. "You know, ladies and gentlemen, this is a charity event. We are here to help the less fortunate, aren't we? Perhaps we should give this young lady—" "What's your name, dear?" "Raina," she answered in a whisper. "Raina," he repeated, savoring each syllable as if it were an exotic dish. "Perhaps we should give Raina the opportunity to participate in our event in a more significant way." A tense silence fell upon the group. The orchestra continued to play in the background, oblivious to the drama unfolding. "Look at this magnificent piano," Vaughan continued, gesturing theatrically to the instrument. "Imported from Germany especially for this occasion. A Steinway & Sons that cost more than many of you earn in a year." Nervous laughter punctuated the comment. No one dared to challenge Henry Vaughan at his own event, even when his behavior crossed the line of decency. "Raina, with her cleaning gloves, seems ready to polish our souls tonight," he continued, his voice laden with sarcasm. "What do you say to showing us your musical talents?" Dr. Eliza tried to intervene. "Henry, this is not appropriate. The girl is clearly embarrassed and—" "Nonsense, Eliza! We are just offering an opportunity. Isn't that what your institute preaches? Opportunities for everyone?" The entire ballroom was now observing the scene. Some people seemed uncomfortable, others openly amused. Raina remained paralyzed, her eyes fixed on the piano which, moments before, represented a dream and had now transformed into an instrument of her humiliation. "Let's do better." Vaughan raised his voice, addressing everyone present. "If this young lady can play something on this piano, something that doesn't make our ears bleed, I will personally donate $1 million to the Ascend Institute, and maybe even adopt her." Laughter erupted through the ballroom. For that elite, the idea that a girl like Raina, clearly from the outskirts, a cleaning lady's daughter, could play a concert piano was absurd. The suggestion of adoption, then, was the height of the cruel joke, as if she were an exotic pet bought on impulse. Dr. Eliza held Raina's arm protectively. "This is ridiculous, Henry. You're shaming a child for your own amusement. I'm offering $1 million to your institute, Eliza. $1 million! All I ask in return is a little entertainment." The atmosphere in the ballroom oscillated between embarrassment and morbid amusement. Some guests were already beginning to move away, uncomfortable with the situation, while others drew closer, eager to watch the spectacle of humiliation. It was then that a voice rose from the back of the ballroom. "Leave the girl alone, Henry. This has gone too far." It was Charles Edward Miller, a renowned conductor and composer known for his difficult temperament and his intransigence when it came to music. He approached with firm steps, his face red with indignation. If you want to donate to the Institute, then donate. But don't turn this into a Roman circus. Henry Vaughan didn't like to be challenged, especially in public. His face hardened, but he quickly regained his calculated smile. My dear maestro, I'm just trying to make the evening more interesting. Besides, Raina herself can decide. What do you say, girl? Do you want to try playing this piano and help Dr. Eliza's institute? Or would you prefer to go back to the staff room with the other employees? Raina looked at the piano, then at the faces around her, some compassionate, others cruel, most just curious. She thought of her mother, who was probably frantic looking for her. She thought of the nights she fell asleep to the sound of the old melodies Mrs. Joanna hummed, remembering the times she played at the community school. Slowly, as if in a trance, she began to take off the rubber gloves. Her small trembling fingers were exposed with short, clean nails. Dr. Eliza tried to stop her once more. Raina, you don't have to do this. No one here has the right to pressure you. The girl looked at her with a mix of gratitude and determination. It's okay, I want to play. The words came out almost in a whisper, but they were heard by everyone around. An expectant silence filled the ballroom as Raina, with hesitant steps, approached the grand piano. Charles Edward, the maestro, gave Vaughan a warning look and positioned himself near the instrument, as if to offer moral support to the girl. Raina sat on the high bench, adjusting it with difficulty to reach the pedals. Her legs dangled in the air, not touching the floor. Her hands hovered over the keys like small frightened birds, undecided where to land. Raina closed her eyes for a moment. She took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing heart. In the darkness of her closed eyelids, she saw her mother's face. She remembered the nights when Mrs. Joanna, exhausted after work, still found the strength to teach her musical notes. With an old, worn-out second-hand keyboard, she had learned her first melodies. Don't think about the notes, her mother used to say. Feel the music. It's already inside you, it just needs to find a way out. Opening her eyes again, Raina saw the expectant faces around her. Some smiled mockingly, anticipating failure. Others seemed embarrassed or pitying. In the background, she noticed Mr. Adam, who had just entered the ballroom and was watching her with an expression of pure terror. She knew he was thinking about her mother's job, his own job, the consequences that absurd situation could bring. Her fingers lightly touched the keys, feeling the cold temperature of the ivory. A solitary note echoed through the ballroom, followed by another and another, hesitant at first, like raindrops announcing a storm. Then it happened. The melody emerged, soft at first, then growing in intensity. It wasn't a complex piece like those Maestro Charles Edward usually conducted, nor an elaborate classical composition. It was a melancholy and beautiful Brazilian song her mother had taught her, Carinhoso by Pixinguinha, in a simplified arrangement for piano. The laughter ceased. The mocking smiles froze on faces. A respectful silence took over the room, broken only by the notes flowing from Raina's small, agile fingers. The girl who moments before had seemed tiny and fragile now dominated the environment. Her posture changed, her back straight, her chin slightly raised, her eyes half closed in concentration. Henry Vaughan watched, astonished. On his face, arrogance first gave way to surprise, then to an expression difficult to decipher, perhaps shame, perhaps reluctant admiration. Dr. Eliza smiled, moved, while Maestro Charles Edward approached the piano, fascinated by the natural talent he was witnessing. When the last note of Carinhoso dissolved into the air, there was a moment of absolute silence. Raina kept her fingers resting on the keys, fearing that if she moved them, she would break the enchantment. It was Charles Edward who first spoke, with a solitary applause that was soon followed by others, until the entire ballroom reverberated with enthusiastic clapping. Extraordinary, the maestro murmured, approaching Raina. Where did you learn to play like that, girl? Before she could answer, a commotion at the entrance of the ballroom drew everyone's attention. Mrs. Joanna appeared, breathless, her cleaning uniform crumpled and her eyes wide with panic. Seeing her daughter sitting at the piano, surrounded by New York City's elite, she froze. Mr. Adam was by her side, whispering hurried explanations. "Raina!" she exclaimed, running towards her daughter. "My God, what have you done?" Reaching the piano, she knelt beside her daughter and held her hands, examining them as if looking for injuries. Only then did she notice the silence that had settled in the ballroom, all eyes fixed on her. "Forgive me, Mr. Vaughan," she said, addressing the businessman in a trembling voice. "My daughter shouldn't be here. It was an accident. Please don't harm us for this. It wasn't a plea for justice. It was a plea for mercy." Joanna knew well the power that men like Henry Vaughan had over lives like hers. With a word, he could ensure she never got another job in New York City. Henry approached slowly, his face an unfathomable mask. The tension in the air was palpable, like electricity before a storm. "Your daughter has an extraordinary gift, Mrs. Joanna." "Joanna Ferreira," she replied automatically, still kneeling, her hands protectively on Rayna's shoulders. "Mrs. Ferreira," Vaughan continued, his voice now softened, almost gentle. "Your daughter has just taught all of us here a lesson about not judging by appearances, about talent and determination." A murmur of agreement ran through the ballroom. Some guests seemed genuinely touched, others merely relieved not to have to witness a scene of public humiliation. "As promised," Vaughan continued, turning to Dr. Eliza, "I will make the donation of $1 million to the Ascend Institute. And as for the other part of the promise," Joanna stood up abruptly, pulling Rayna close to her. "No," she said with a firmness that surprised everyone, including herself. "Rayna is not an object to be adopted or donated. She is my daughter. She has a mother who loves her and who raised her with dignity despite all the difficulties." An embarrassed silence hung in the air. Vaughan seemed momentarily disconcerted, unaccustomed to being confronted, especially by someone he considered socially inferior. It was Charles Edward who broke the impasse. "What Mrs. Ferreira means, Henry, is that perhaps there's a better way to support Rayna's talent than treating her as some kind of charity project." Dr. Eliza approached, placing herself beside Joanna and Rayna. "I agree. The Ascend Institute offers scholarships for young talents in various artistic fields. It would be more appropriate to offer Rayna a structured opportunity to develop her gift, under her mother's guardianship, naturally." Vaughan, sensing the change in the room's tone, quickly adapted his posture. Of course. That's exactly what I meant. Young Rayna deserves every opportunity to develop this extraordinary talent, and I am willing to personally sponsor her studies at the conservatory she chooses." Joanna looked at the businessman with a mix of suspicion and hope. She knew that men like him rarely did anything without ulterior motives, without expectations of return. On the other hand, she could never provide her daughter with the kind of musical education she deserved. "I appreciate the offer, Mr. Vaughan," she finally said, her voice firmer. "But I need to think about this carefully. Any decision about Rayna's future must be made, considering what is best for her, not what is convenient for adults with guilty consciences." A murmur ran through the ballroom. The audacity of that woman, a simple cleaning lady, to question Henry Vaughan's generosity. Some guests exchanged surprised glances, others smiled discreetly, admiring her courage. Vaughan, however, showed no irritation. On the contrary, an enigmatic smile formed on his lips. "Fair enough," he replied simply. "Take all the time you need. My offer stands." At that moment, the string orchestra, which had remained silent throughout the scene, softly resumed playing, as if signaling the end of that dramatic interlude and the return to the event's normal program. Joanna held Rayna's hand firmly and began to move away, intending to leave the ballroom as discreetly as possible. But with every step they took, someone approached to praise the girl's talent, ask questions about her musical training, or simply shake her hand. From an object of scorn, Rayna had transformed into the celebrity of the night. Among the admirers, an elegant middle-aged woman introduced herself as Regina Brooks, director of the New York City Municipal Conservatory. "Your talent is impressive. Rayna," she said, handing Joanna a card, "I would very much like to talk to you both about possibilities for the future. We have a scholarship program for young talents like you." Joanna accepted the card mechanically, still stunned by the night's events. She thanked her and continued towards the exit, guiding Rayna through the now familiar hotel corridors, back to the service area where they could finally breathe. In the staff room, Mr. Adam waited, his face a mask of concern. "Joanna, I'm so sorry. I should have kept an eye on the girl, but I was dealing with a problem in the kitchen and—" "It's all right, Adam," Joanna interrupted, too exhausted to prolong the conversation. It wasn't your fault. Raina knows she shouldn't have left here. Raina lowered her eyes, embarrassed, but secretly exultant about what she had just experienced. The weight of the piano under her fingers, the respectful silence of the ballroom, the applause. It was as if, for a few minutes, she had found a piece of herself that had been lost for a long time. The next morning, the small apartment in Eastwood Borough seemed strangely silent. Raina sat at the kitchen table, distractedly playing with the cereal in her milk. Mrs. Joanna prepared coffee with mechanical movements, lost in thought. The previous night seemed like a distant dream, or perhaps a nightmare, depending on the angle from which one looked. "Mum," Raina finally broke the silence, "are you mad at me?" Joanna sighed, leaving the kettle on the stove and sitting opposite her daughter. "I'm not mad. Raina, I'm confused, worried. I don't know what to think about all this. About the piano? Me playing well? Not just that. About the people in that world, their intentions. About what's truly best for you." Joanna took out the card Regina Brooks had given her the night before from her purse. The paper was thick, elegant, with golden letters announcing the New York City Municipal Conservatory. Beside it, she placed another, more ostentatious card with the Vaughan Enterprises logo. "Mr. Vaughan's secretary called me this morning," she explained. "He reiterated the offer to sponsor your studies. He wants to schedule a meeting with us." Raina's eyes widened, torn between excitement and fear. "And what did you say?" "That I needed time to think." "I don't trust that man, Raina. The way he treated you yesterday, as if you were an exotic pet he could show off to his friends." The girl lowered her eyes to the cereal, now too soggy in the milk. "But what if it's my only chance, Mum? To learn real music?" The question hit Joanna like a punch to the stomach. It was exactly what she feared, that Raina would feel obliged to accept humiliations and condescension in exchange for opportunities that should be the right of any talented child, regardless of their social background. The phone rang, interrupting the conversation. Joanna answered, expecting to hear Mr. Adams' authoritative voice summoning her for another extra shift. But the voice on the other end of the line was feminine, soft and polite. "Mrs. Ferreira, this is Regina Brooks from the Municipal Conservatory. We met yesterday." "At the Grand Palace event," Joanna confirmed, tense, while Raina watched her curiously. "I would like to invite you both, you and Raina, to visit the conservatory this afternoon, if possible. I would be honored to show you our facilities and discuss the possibilities for your daughter's musical future." The proposal sounded sincere, without the condescension Joanna feared. Regina seemed genuinely interested in Raina's talent, not in using her as some kind of charity trophy. "Yes, we can go," she replied after a brief hesitation. "Raina doesn't have class today, and I'm off." She didn't mention that. In truth, she didn't know if she still had a job at the Grand Palace after the events of the previous night. Mr. Adam had been vague when they said goodbye, only saying they would talk later. At 2 in the afternoon, mother and daughter got off the bus on Maple Street in front of an imposing building of neoclassical architecture. The New York City Municipal Conservatory occupied a historic building, with columns on the facade and large windows that offered glimpses of spacious rooms where musical instruments gleamed under natural light. Regina Brooks awaited them at the entrance, elegant in a navy blue suit. Beside her, to Joanna and Raina's surprise, was Maestro Charles Edward, who greeted them with genuine enthusiasm. "So glad you could come," Regina said, guiding them through the conservatory's lobby. "Charles Edward told me about your impressive performance yesterday. Raina, we rarely see such pure natural talent." As they walked through the corridors, Raina observed everything with wide eyes, the framed sheet music on the walls, the busts of famous composers, and especially the classrooms where young people practiced various instruments, pianos, violins, cellos, flutes. "How did you learn to play, Raina?" Charles Edward asked as they climbed a marble staircase. "Did you have formal lessons?" The girl looked hesitantly at her mother, who nodded, encouraging her to answer. "My mum taught me," she said shyly. "She used to teach at our neighborhood community school. We had a keyboard at home, but we had to sell it." Charles Edward looked at Joanna with new interest. "You're a pianist, then?" Joanna laughed without humor. "I was. I studied music for a few years, but life happened. Now I'm a cleaning assistant." Regina and Charles Edward exchanged meaningful glances, but made no comments. They continued the tour, showing the music library, the auditorium with perfect acoustics, and finally, the piano room, a spacious area with half a dozen grand pianos lined up like gigantic sleeping animals. "Would you like to try one of them, Raina?" Regina invited. The girl looked at her mother, seeking permission, which came in the form of an encouraging smile. She approached the nearest piano, sat on the bench, adjusting it to reach the pedals, and began to play. This time she chose a more complex composition for her level, a passage from Baquianas Brasileiras by Villa-Lobos, which her mother had taught her. Her fingers glided across the keys with growing confidence, as if the piano were an extension of her own body. Regina and Charles Edward watched, mesmerized. When the last note echoed through the room, the maestro applauded enthusiastically. "Extraordinary. And you say you've never had formal lessons?" "Only with my mother," Raina replied, looking at Joanna with admiration. "And what a wonderful teacher you had," Regina commented, addressing Joanna. She maintained pure technique, without unnecessary mannerisms. It's rare to see that nowadays. Joanna felt her eyes sting with unshed tears. How long had it been since anyone recognized her as more than a cleaning lady? How long had her musical knowledge not been valued? Regina then led them to her office, an elegant room overlooking the conservatory's inner garden. On the table, she laid out some papers and brochures. "The conservatory offers a full scholarship program for exceptional young talents," she explained. "It includes instrument lessons, music theory, music history, and participation in the youth orchestra. We rarely offer this scholarship to children as young as Raina, but her talent justifies an exception." Joanna examined the documents cautiously. "And what are the trade-offs?" Regina seemed confused. "Trade-offs?" "Yes. What do you expect in return? Mandatory performances, media interviews about the prodigy girl from the outskirts, use of her image for institutional marketing." Charles Edward smiled, understanding the concern. "Mrs. Ferreira, I understand your distrust. What happened yesterday at the Grand Palace was deplorable, using Raina's talent as a kind of circus act. But I assure you that is not what we seek here." Regina nodded, serious. "The only trade-off is dedication to studies and participation in the conservatory's regular recitals, like any other scholarship student. We do not exploit our students for publicity or media spectacles." Joanna relaxed slightly, but there was still another question. "And how would she attend classes?" "We live in Eastwood Borough. So it's 2 hours by public transport to get here on good days." Regina hesitated, looking at Charles Edward as if seeking support. "Well, normally we don't do this, but given the exceptional circumstances, we could include a transport allowance in the scholarship. And as for classes, we could concentrate them on 3 days a week, to facilitate logistics. We could also adapt the class schedule so it doesn't conflict with regular school," Charles Edward added. The proposal seemed too good to be true. Joanna looked for the catch, the hidden angle, the disguised trap. Years of hardship had taught her that opportunities rarely came without a hidden price. "And Mr. Vaughan?" she finally asked. "Does he have any influence over the conservatory? Any connection with this scholarship program?" Regina and Charles Edward exchanged glances again, this time with an expression that blended discomfort and determination. "Mrs. Ferreira," Regina began carefully, "it would be dishonest to say that Vaughan Enterprises has no relationship with the conservatory. They are one of our sponsors, though not the only one." But Charles Edward intervened energetically. "The offer of this scholarship has nothing to do with him. It is an exclusively academic decision based on Raina's extraordinary merit." "Indeed," Regina continued, "I received a call from him this morning. He said he wanted to personally sponsor Raina's studies, with private lessons from the best teachers in the country. I politely declined on behalf of the conservatory." Joanna's eyes widened, surprised. "You declined? Why?" "Because I believe Raina's talent will flourish best in a collective environment, with other students, as part of a musical community. Isolating her as a special project of a wealthy benefactor would be detrimental to her artistic and personal development." Joanna felt a wave of gratitude flood her chest. Finally, someone who seemed to understand her concerns. who saw Raina as a talented child deserving of dignified opportunities, not as an object of charity or an exotic curiosity. 6 months had passed since that night at the Grand Palace Hotel. Autumn had already tinged New York City's few trees with yellowish tones, and a cool breeze blew through the open windows of the municipal conservatory. Raina sat at the piano on the main auditorium stage, adjusting the bench with the ease of someone who already felt at home in that environment. Her hands no longer trembled when touching the keys. They moved with precision and confidence, as if they had found their true purpose. In the front rows of the audience, Mrs. Joanna watched her daughter with teary eyes. Beside her, Regina Brooks and Charles Edward quietly commented on the girl's extraordinary progress in recent months. In the following rows, other conservatory students and their families awaited the start of the semi-annual recital. "She has the gift," Charles Edward murmured. "In 30 years of teaching music, I've never seen anyone absorb knowledge with such natural ease." Joanna smiled, a mix of pride and nostalgia in her gaze. In recent months, her life had completely changed. After the incident at the Grand Palace, she had been called to the Human Resources Office fearing dismissal. To her surprise, instead, she received an unexpected proposal. The hotel was looking for a coordinator for a new live music program for Sunday dinners, someone with musical knowledge, but also familiar with the hotel's operational dynamics. "We are aware of your musical background," the HR manager explained, visibly embarrassed by how the information had reached the board, "and we believe this role would be more suited to your skills." The salary was almost double what she earned as a cleaning assistant. The new duties allowed her to accompany Raina to the conservatory 3 times a week and still be home on other days when her daughter returned from regular school. Joanna suspected that the sudden change had something to do with Henry Vaughan, perhaps an attempt at compensation for the public embarrassment, or a way to stay indirectly connected to the discovery of Raina's talent. Whatever the reason, she decided to accept the opportunity. She was competent, knew music, deserved the position as much as anyone else. On stage, Raina awaited Regina's signal to begin her performance. She wore a simple but elegant dress, a gift from Dr. Eliza, who had become a mentor and friend to the family. The Ascend Institute, benefiting from the donation promised by Vaughan, now offered an after-school tutoring program that Raina attended on days she wasn't at the conservatory. Regina made a discreet gesture, and Raina began her performance. She had chosen a challenging piece for her level, Chopin's Prelude No. 4, a composition that required both technique and interpretive sensitivity. Her fingers glided across the keys with increasing precision, each note perfectly articulated. From the 5th row, a man watched intently. Henry Vaughan remained discreet, almost incognito, without the usual pomp of his public appearances. In the months that followed that night at the Grand Palace, he had rethought many of his attitudes. The memory of how he had treated Raina, the public humiliation he had tried to impose on a child, still bothered him deeply. He had tried in various ways to compensate for the mistake. He had offered personal sponsorship, generous donations, even a grand piano for Joanna and Raina's residence, an offer politely declined, as it wouldn't fit in their small apartment. All attempts felt empty, insufficient. It wasn't money that would erase what he had done, he finally understood. Beside Vaughan, his 15-year-old daughter Sophia watched Raina with genuine admiration. It had been her idea to attend the recital. "We need to support her as an artist, Dad, not as your charity project," she had said with the straightforward wisdom of adolescence. Sophia studied violin, without much enthusiasm, more to satisfy paternal expectations than out of vocation. Upon discovering Raina, she had become fascinated not only by the girl's talent, but by the authenticity of her connection to music. The piece came to an end, and Raina kept her fingers suspended over the keys for a moment, as if reluctant to break the spell. When she finally stood up and made a shy bow, the auditorium erupted in applause. Joanna was the first to stand, followed by Regina, Charles Edward, and soon the entire audience. Raina's eyes searched for her mother in the crowd, her smile lighting up as she found her. At that moment it was just the two of them, mother and daughter, united by love and the music that had always been their bond. Even in the most difficult times, after the performance, While guests gathered in the foyer for a simple cocktail, Raina was approached by Sophia Vaughan. "You play in a different way," the teenager said without ceremony, "as if the music is alive inside you." Raina blushed at the unexpected compliment. "Thank you. I try to feel every note. I'm Sophia. I study violin here at the conservatory on Tuesdays and Thursdays." "I know who you are," Raina replied, suddenly tense as she noticed Henry Vaughan approaching. The businessman kept a respectful distance, sensing the girl's discomfort. In recent months he had learned belatedly about boundaries and respect. "Congratulations on your performance, Raina," he said simply. "It was moving." The girl nodded, unsure how to respond. It was Joanna who stepped forward, placing herself protectively beside her daughter. "Thank you for coming," she said, addressing Sophia and with some effort, including Henry in the thanks. It's important for Raina to have support on her musical journey. Vaughan seemed momentarily surprised by Joanna's civility, then relieved. He managed a smile that, for the first time since they had known him, seemed genuine, without arrogance or condescension. "Sophia is organizing a charity recital next month," he commented, "young talents from the conservatory, with proceeds going to music education programs in public schools. She would be honored if Raina considered participating." Joanna and Raina exchanged glances. The proposal sounded sincere without ulterior motives. An opportunity to play, to share music, to help other young people have the same chances Raina now had. "We'll think about it," Joanna replied, neither accepting nor refusing immediately. It was a small power she now wielded, the right to consider, evaluate, decide what was best for her daughter, without pressure or manipulation. At that moment, Dr. Eliza approached, greeting everyone with her warm demeanor. In recent months, she had become a constant presence in Raina and Joanna's lives, offering not only practical support through the Ascend Institute, but also a sincere friendship that transcended social barriers. "I had an idea," she announced animatedly. "The Institute is expanding its activities, and we're thinking of opening a music education center in Eastwood Borough. For children in the community." Joanna's eyes widened, surprised and intrigued. "And we need an educational coordinator," Eliza continued, looking directly at Joanna. "Someone with musical knowledge and, most importantly, with sensitivity to work with children from different backgrounds. I immediately thought of you." The proposal caught Joanna off guard. Coordinating a music education center, returning to teaching, to sharing her knowledge and passion for music. It was as if a cycle was completing, as if she were returning to the starting point, but now in a position of greater strength and wisdom. I don't know what to say," she stammered. "Say you'll think about it," Eliza smiled, "and that you'll come visit me at the Institute on Monday to discuss the details." Regina, who had been listening to the conversation, approached with enthusiasm. "It would be a wonderful partnership with the conservatory. We could develop an exchange program, identify talents, offer scholarships. And Vaughan Enterprises would be delighted to sponsor the initiative," Henry added, now speaking as a businessman, not a personal benefactor. A serious, structured social investment without personal biases. Sophia pulled Raina aside, leaving the adults engrossed in discussing the new project. "They'll be at this for hours," she commented, rolling her eyes with typical teenage boredom. "Want to go to the piano room? I have a new piece of sheet music I'd love for you to help me understand." Raina hesitated, looking at her mother, who was now gesturing animatedly, completely absorbed in the conversation about the music center. Joanna, feeling her daughter's gaze, turned and gave a gesture of approval. She trusted Raina, her judgment, her ability to navigate this new world that was opening for both of them. The two girls walked away, heading to the piano room. Despite the difference in age and social background, a genuine connection was beginning to form, not based on charity or obligation, but on mutual respect and a shared love for music. In the piano room, Raina sat at the instrument, while Sophia took some sheet music from her bag. Before starting to play, Raina looked out the window at the New York City sky that was beginning to be tinged with the colors of dusk. She thought of the extraordinary journey of the past months, the doors that had opened, the people who had entered her life. She thought, above all, of her mother, of Mrs. Joanna's unwavering strength, who never allowed difficult circumstances to diminish her dignity or extinguish her dreams, who had taught her daughter not only musical notes, but the importance of believing in herself, of defending her worth, of never allowing others to define her limits. With a serene smile, Raina turned to the piano and began to play, not to impress, not to prove something, but simply for the pure joy of existing in harmony with the music that had always been within her, just waiting for the opportunity to express itself. And in the notes that flowed from her fingers was the promise of a future where talent, opportunity, and dignity would not be privileges of a few, but rights of all. Dear listeners, we hope that the story of Raina and Mrs. Joanna has touched your hearts and made you reflect on the hidden talents that exist in every corner of our cities. To continue following narratives that move and transform, be sure to subscribe to our channel and activate notifications. We have a special playlist with other inspiring Brazilian stories waiting for you at the link provided. Leave your comments telling us what touched you most on this musical journey, and don't forget to like this video to help us bring more stories like this to thousands of people. Until the next story that will make your heart vibrate at new frequencies,